Hello everyone, welcome to a quick episode of the MTG Arena Runs Top 10. It's October, and for this one I decided to do a very simple category, top 10 cards that refer to other cards by name. So these ones are sets of cards. If you are familiar with other games like say Yu-Gi-Oh, it's essentially like the Exodia set, or cards that or fusion cards that basically this plus this equals this, but here in this case I'm just keeping it simpler. It's more like this card will have the name of another card, and what it did to the other card, or how it benefited from the other card, that's kind of part of how it will affect the top 10. There are actually many cards that fit this category now. So we'll get right onto it. So first up, the cards that are not quite there. So starting with Kaladesh, we got a bunch of Planeswalker decks. They all had a rare that what you would cast, and it was a good way to tutor up the mythic Planeswalker. There's a ton of them. They're all very obvious. They're also all not so good unless you're trying to do a Planeswalker tribal. But that said, you're not gonna see those there. There's also another set. There's also another set of cards that are not making the list. It's the Orzatron. This one originally was number 1. I was really thinking I could justify this, but the way they printed it, they don't refer to the Urza's Mine, the Urza's Power Plant, or Urza's Tower by name. They actually made subtypes for these cards. And that was the only way these could be referred to. In fact, Urza's itself is a subtype, so one could argue that if you control a mine, a power plant, and a tower, that would all not be necessary. But frankly, there's really no reason for these to be subtypes. This could easily just be based on card name. This one was actually more of a functional change if you think of it. But that said, I'm sticking to my own arbitrary rules, and we're not going to get these here. But I am going to mention this because these cards still affect play up to this day. In fact, it's pretty much the modern boogeyman, so to speak. But here we go. Number 10. This one's an old classic from Legions. It's Dark Supplicant, Tutoring Sign of Darkness. Now, this one is down here all the way at number 10. This one's the original one. In Shards of Alara block, we'd get a series of heralds. Basically, each shard would get this one creature on the color they're centered on. They'd have an ability very similar to Dark Supplicant, except it sacrifice 3 different creatures of each of the 3 different colors that made up the shard, and you get to tutor up something very big as a result. And for most part, I think they all cost 8 as well. So the stats are much more different. It's not as bad as Sign of Darkness is now, although Sign of Darkness does have cycling. That said, if you sacrifice any 3 clerics, including Dark Supplicant possibly included, or if you're playing a massive clerics deck, you could. It doesn't have to. And also you got to get it from Graveyard Hand and or Library, though if I remember the attendance correctly, they kind of did the same thing. And for all this effort, you got, at least back in Legions, you got a 6/6 trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may put target creature card from that player's graveyard into play under your control. So I guess it's fine. And if you get a bunch of these, you can actually cycle them, so it's so they're not actually stranded. It actually works very well with Dark Supplicant, so this is probably better in that respect. But there we go. This is our number 10. It's pretty much here down at the bottom with the Shards of Alara attendance down with it, basically because it's kind of there. It's not. It's kind of a template, I'd say, but it's not that great. Number 9. This one is more of the cards that refer to this card that just keep building and building and building up on it. So we'll start with the very beginning. Cobalts of Kirkkeep. It's basically a 0 mana 0/1 red creature. The original combo was just basically these guys with a lot of the other kobolds from Legends. Basically, there are kobolds that give other kobolds +1/+0, +0 +1. I think there's one that gave +1/+1. It was just a bit more expensive. But Roga of Kirkkeep, 2 black black red red, so 6 mana for a 5/5. All your kobolds of Kirkkeep, specifically this one, got +2/+2, and you had to keep paying on pay triple red every upkeep, or else Roga and all them kobolds defect to your opponent. Now this was a very interesting choice because it could have just simply referred to kobolds as the tribe rather than specifically kobolds of Kirkkeep, because there's also the Crookshank kobolds, same stats, different name. Basically, it's a way to get 8 copies of 0140. I put this up here at number 9 because this would otherwise be very unassuming, but it was one that we kept building up on in history. Time Spiral block, we got Kirkkeep, a legendary land that allowed us that created tokens named Cobalts of Kirkkeep. And move a little bit forward towards in Commander, we get Prosh Sky Raider of Kur, where you cast and you can and you get additional 0/1 red kobold creatures. Well, it just made it for fodder more or less, but that was pretty much the interesting idea. Basically, this was the card that referred to another card that over in time another card would refer to this card, over in time another card would refer to this card. Although the latter cards would just end up making it themselves, you did not actually need to have copies of this original legend. But it's a nice nostalgia thing. So that's why it's kind of down here at number 9. I guess this could trade places easily with number 10. Number 8, Walker of the Wastes, 4 and colorless for an Eldrazi. This one's from Oath of the Gatewatch. So it's a 4/4 with trample, but it also gets +1/+1 for each land you control named Wastes. It's down here because it's relatively easy to benefit off this from this block. You just basically had to run the mono Eldrazi deck. It's also kind of down here at number 8 because it's kind of one of the few Eldrazi that did not really make a splash. It barely got represented in Standard, if I remember correctly. It never made a splash in Modern compared to all the other Eldrazi. But it has the benefit of referring to a basic land, and not a land type because Waste doesn't have a land type. But it does refer to a basic land, and it has to call it out by name because of the lack of a land type. And it's interesting. It's pretty much the only colorless. Well, no, that's not true. There are spoiler. There's going to be a few other colorless cards here, but this one was an interesting card way of naming another card. So number 8, we got Walker of the Wastes and basic land by the name. This one is the more realistic one. Number 7, the original Nessa Ravine. Basically, we're focusing on her first +1 ability, where you search your library for a card named Nissa's Chosen, put it on the battlefield, then you shuffle your library. So unlike many other Planeswalkers nowadays that would make tokens, this one you had to actually search your library for a card. This was back when Nissa was the elf-centric deck. And Nissa's Chosen by itself is no slouch. It's basically you take up a +1 for a 2/3 that when it dies, you put it on the bottom of this owner's library, probably for Nessa Ravine to get back. So it was a very interesting combo. It was for most elf decks, if you were running this, if you bothered to run Nessa Ravine, it was probably worth having 1 or 2 copies of Nissa's Chosen. You probably didn't need that many. Also, the second +1, you gain 2 life for each elf you control. Not the strongest, but if you're playing elves, you probably have a lot more elves. You could just +1 that way. So, but this is pretty much the only Planeswalker that refer to other cards by name. So here we go. Refer to other cards by name, because there's some that would make named tokens. That's a different story. But there you go. Number 7, Nessa Ravine and her Chosen. Number 6, the one way to put this is that a a bunch of the early new version of core sets did some experiments on card sets that that were named. So here in M12 we also had the original Arachnus Web and the Arachnus Spinner, but this was the one that was more remembered. So here we have the Empire set. Crown of Empires, Scepter of Empires, Throne of Empires. Each one had a relatively weak ability, but it got better when you control the other ones. Like, let's take this Crown of Empires for a very unassuming uncommon. Basically, it's 3 mana, tap it to tap target creature. Not so great, but if you have the Scepter and the Throne, you gain control of that creature instead. And there's no limitation to the time, so that was pretty attractive for an uncommon. The Scepter probably more likely to get used. Basically, it's tapped to ding your opponent for 1 or 3 damage if you control the other parts of the set. Then the Throne of Empires, this was the rare part. It's 1 mana tap, put a single 1/1 white soldier creature on the battlefield. Put 5 instead if you control the set. So it was cards that functioned relatively below average by themselves, but were way above average when the set was complete. Unfortunately, M12 by itself did not they had many other cards that benefited of artifacts, but the tutoring support was not quite there. The Empire set was really more of a meme set, but compared to other sets that would follow, especially that would follow in other core sets like M14, if I'm not mistaken, had the Bogbrew Witch, the Festering Newt, and the Bubbling Cauldron. This one is probably the most realistic one to attain, simply because of its colorless nature. And although I would mention the M14 set had the Newt at common, had the Cauldron at uncommon, had the Witch at rare, so that one is probably that's another decent fit. But that's number 6, Empire set, representing all the attempts they've made in core sets to incorporate these triple set cards. Number 5, this one is actually one of the original Transformer or Let Our Powers Combine style cards. So here we have Feral Shadow, 2 and a black for a 2/1 flyer. Okay, not assuming. Breath Stealer, 2 and a black for a 2/2 with. It's not even the good shade ability. It was +1/-1. So, okay, that's kind of fine. Orborg Panther, 2 and a black for a 2/2 with an activated ability. Black, sacrifice the Orborg Panther to destroy target creature blocking Orborg Panther. Okay, so basically 3 really bad creatures. But wait! No, for no additional mana, just sacrifice the Shadow, the Breath Stealer, and the Orborg Panther. You can search your library for Spirit of the Night. Originally, this was supposed to be Spirit of the Night Stalker, but they could not fit it. They could not fit the name in the set. And it just enters the battlefield. Just get it from there. And Spirit of the Night was actually quite relatively decent for a Mirage card. It's very expensive, but that's only because of the cheat your way ability. So flying, trample, protection from black. Okay, well, black was actually, even the protection from black was awkward because most black spells back in the day also were destroy target non-black creature. So it probably wouldn't have hit the Spirit of the Night anyway. It has first strike when attacking, and it has haste. So basically, keyword soup, 6/5. You could get this out earliest. The earliest you could get this out was turn 5 though. Basically, Feral Shadow turn 3, Breath Stealer turn 4, or Orborg Panther turn 5, or back in the day, this was when Dark Ritual was legal, so turn 1 Feral Shadow, turn 2. Oh, you can actually get as early as turn 2. Basically, turn 1 Feral Shadow, turn 2 off a Dark Rit, turn 2 Breath Stealer and Orborg Panther off a Dark Rit. So for 3 Dark Rituals, 3 creatures, you could get a Spirit of the Night, which was probably going to eat the Swords to Plowshares. It's up here at number 5 based off history and based off the innovation at the time. There would be other cards that would also start testing this out. Like later in Visions, we'd have a pair of Drakes that would combine into an even bigger Drake. But creatures were not that great back in the day, and kind of no exception. But it's here basically for being one of the forerunners. Number 5, the Night Stalker into Spirit of the Night combo. Now, this is the one that when I got back into Magic, this is the one I encountered. I tried to build a deck around this back in the day. So this was number 4. This is the Arcane into the Unspeakable combo. So you just had to cast 3 spells. So this actually seems to be a little bit harder, but the spells were relatively good for what they did. Okay, maybe not the Reach True Mist so much. It's single blue, draw card. It was Arcane though, so you had Arcane shenanigans. It's essentially blue, white, or blue, red. Splice, bunch of good stuff. That's kind of what I tried to do anyway back in the day. It didn't turn out that great. Peer Through Depths, 1 and a blue, also an instant. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card among them and put in your hand. Then put the rest in the bottom. Then Sift Through Sands, 1 blue, blue. Also an instant. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Then then this is the kicker. So you have to cast the Reach True Mists and Peer Through Depths first before casting Sift. Once you cast the Sift, if you've cast all 3 spells essentially, you may search your library for the Unspeakable and put it into the battlefield. So you can even do this end of turn if you had 6 mana, or yeah, basically if you had 6 mana, you can do this end of turn. You got what's essentially the Unspeakable, valued at 9 mana, though I probably could be a little bit cheaper. It was a 6/7 flying trample creature. Whenever the Unspeakable deals combat damage to a player, you may return target Arcane card from your graveyard to your hand. So I think I've made it work once or twice. It was unfortunate that this was around the time that that Mirrodin was romping through the format, so it wasn't exactly easy to make things work. There were other better combos back in the day. But this is a very interesting combo in its own right. It's a nice it's a nice fun casual one. Would I rate this? Well, I rated this better than the other one, the earlier Night Stalker combo, because at least for blue, this does everything that blue kind of wants to do, which is filter through cards. You probably had other colors to help in your control elements. You could really bite a lot of time with this. So this is number 4, basically the Unspeakable combo. It's I kind of rate it okay. Number 3, this one is Renowned Weaponsmith. Now I'm showing you the M20 printing because it's a lot cleaner, but this had a very interesting story. So Renowned Weaponsmith appeared in the middle set of Khans blocks. So for those who don't know, Khans of Tarkir was one big set. Dragons of Tarkir was another big set, and Fate Reforged was the middle set. That's a small set. So what happened was they decided to make a set that centered around time travel, alternate timelines. And what would happen is you would either draft. It started out with triple Khans because that's the first set that came out. Then it would be Fate Reforged, Khans. And then when the next set came out, you'd be drafting Fate Reforged, Dragons. What essentially happened was by the events of Fate Reforged, the timeline has changed. It's no longer the Renowned Weaponsmith was basically the one card in the center that highlighted this change. So we got Heartpiercer Bow originally in Khans of Tarkir, and when we got to Renowned Weaponsmith, it's okay. So it's a guy that we can use to tutor for Heartpiercer Bow, which was from the earlier set, or Vial of Dragonfire, which actually created a bit of a buzz because this card would not appear until much later in Dragons of Tarkir, and it turned out to be not so great. In fact, if in terms of limited play, the Heartpiercer Bow was probably a lot more relevant over time. But that said, this was a very good way of playing into the time travel trope, and it also was a very good way for one card to mention 2 other cards' names. Sadly, it's kind of down here at number 3, mostly for the novelty of making it work in the middle of 2 big blocks as part of the time travel storyline. Other than that, not so great. There is another set that does the reveal a lot better. I'll cover it soon. But this is number 3, Renowned Weaponsmith, making weapons based on the timeline that needed it. Number 2, this one's the very recent one, Alpine Houndmaster. Now, the reason I put it way up here in number 2, one, because I'm running a dogs deck right now, but also because this is the one that mentioned other cards but actually netted you card advantage. So, Alpine Houndmaster, red-white, enters the battlefield. You may search your library for a card named Alpine Watchdog and or a card named Igneous Curd, then put them in your hand. So, for one card, this was very good for red-white, basically the colors that have some level of difficulty getting card advantage. So you cast this one creature, you got 2 cards out of your deck, and sure, there may be commons, but they also kind of help as well because Alpine Houndmaster benefits for getting multiple attacking creatures. This guy could get big in a hurry, and even in the earlier days, this one was actually the one combo that is usually run with Winota. I still run it with Winota, as well. Basically, the idea, and it was actually very, very good if you ask me. Now it's kind of down here at number 2 because it netted card advantage for the one pair of colors that have the most difficulty getting card advantage, or at least getting cards into your hand, I should say. But this is my number 2. Number 1 was probably a lot more exciting. Number 1 is the Kaldra set. Sword of Kaldra, Shield of Kaldra, Helm of Cauldron. And this one gets the nod. One, because these were the pre-release cards for their respective pre-releases. They all had very gorgeous art. They even all showed part of the avatar. You can see the background picture. That's the completed avatar. So Sword of Kaldra by itself, very unassuming. It was a huge equipment that basically was a big creature killer and really domed your opponent if it landed. It was Shield of Kaldra that made things interesting. So first off, it named all the other equipment, and that was a bit of a surprise because because this was the middle set, the Shield of Kaldra came out. Helm of Cauldron, naming a card in the future set, kind of anticipated because this was back in the world of 3 set blocks, and it kind of generated hype. Now, everyone was kind of expecting the Helm of Cauldron to also be another 4-mana artifact that was really busted, but instead what we got was a relatively simple effect. First Strike, Trample, Haste. But it had this interesting ability. If you controlled equipment named Helm of Cauldron, Sword of Kaldra, Shield of Kaldra, you got to make a 4/4 colorless avatar legend named Kaldra, and you can attach all those equipment to it. So the Helm of Cauldron was the glue that the shield was referring to. It basically wanted all 3 pieces together. Now, as for actual playability, these cards kind of fell by the wayside. They weren't that great. In fact, I would say in some respects that the Empire set from a lot earlier was probably a lot more playable. But this was the early days. This was equipment that built up hype. It probably would have worked if a different mechanic did not overshadow the entire Mirrodin block. But this is my pick for number 1. And if you guys believe that some of the picks should change, do let me know. So that's it. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, turn on notifications and whatnot. Do let me know if there are any other sets that I missed or probably should have made mention of. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you guys next time. Take care. God bless. Stay safe wherever you are. Have a great day, everyone.